Welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, you drift quietly to a lonely place. A place where the wind never stops moving. Yes, salt air clings to everything. Your skin, your clothes, the floor beneath your boots, and where the sea, in its vastness, becomes both your companion and your silence. In the early 1800s, long before satellites, radios, or radar, a flame could mean the difference between safe harbor and shattered timbers. And somewhere on the edge of the known world, a solitary figure made sure that flame never went out. This episode is not about battlefields or kings. It's about a quieter kind of hero. One who lived in a tower of stone and glass, listening to the foghorn, waiting for storms to pass. As we begin tonight's journey, imagine yourself stepping into heavy boots, closing the door behind you, and climbing the spiral stairs of a lonely lighthouse. Let's begin. With a day that belongs to the sea. The day begins for the sun. You wake not because of an alarm, but because you never really slept. The wind howled through the cracks again last night. It always does. Imagine the walls, thick stone, damp and cold to the touch, wrapped in the scent of salt, oil, and old paint. The room is small, barely enough for a narrow bed, a wooden chair, and a writing desk that started to warp with the moisture. There is no one else, no bustling city below, no knock at the door, just you and the sea. You rise slowly, pull on thick wool, scratchy against the skin, and lace your boots. The air inside the lighthouse is still, except for the creak of old wood and the soft sigh of the ocean beyond the walls. You pause, then begin your first duty. The lamp room is above, so you climb. Each step of the spiral stairway echoes faintly, stone walls spiraling up around you. You place a hand on the cold iron railing and make your way to the top. At the summit, the lantern room awaits. Glass panels surround you, forming a perfect circle, smudged slightly from the salt air that creeps in despite your best efforts.
You begin cleaning the lenses.
Each one a curved surface that must stay spotless. You work with a cloth, slow circular motions. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. A single smudge could distort the light. You check the wick. Is it the right height? It's too high, and the flame smokes. Too low, and it disappears. The lamp is fueled by oil, often whale oil in earlier years, or colza oil from rapeseed if you were lucky. It has a heavy, earthy smell. You top it up carefully. You never know when a storm might come and trap you here for days. Later, you test the foghorn. A strange, haunting sound, like a great beast waking somewhere far off, travels across the water, carried by the wind. A warning, a guide, a sound the sailors know to trust. Sometimes you ring a bell instead, or sound a cannon. Each lighthouse has its own voice, a kind of signature, unique to its point of land and perilous shoal. Breakfast is slow. Bread that's gone hard. A bit of dried meat. Tea if it hasn't run out. You eat looking out the small porthole, watching the endless gray waves. The horizon blurs with the sky. You record everything in the logbook, the time the lamp was lit, the condition of the sea. Clouds, wind, ships spotted. Always ships, if any appear at all. Many days you see nothing, just gulls, the occasional seal, a boat far off, vanishing into the mist, and the routine continues. You check the clockwork mechanism that turns the lens. Wind the weight, adjust the gears. It's a kind of dance, this delicate machinery always in motion, like the tide. You descend again, sweep the floors. Wipe down the brass. Maybe you read a bit. A Bible, an old nautical almanac, or last year's newspaper if one made it to shore. You write a letter, though it may be weeks before it's delivered. The paper curls slightly from the humidity, and then you wait. The rhythm of your day is not marked by meetings or chatter. It's marked by light and dark, wind and calm. You listen to the changes in the air. It's a distant crash of waves. You listen for ships you'll never meet. People you'll never know. You keep the light for strangers. Night returns.
Slowly.
Like ink spilled over the sea. You climb again. The fourth or fifth time today, to light the lamp, you strike the match carefully, shield it from the wind. The wick catches, and the lens begins to glow, The flame dances behind glass and brass. Sea stretches out into darkness, but your light now spins, slow and steady, a comfort to those adrift. You sit for a while at the top, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the glass rattle slightly in its frame, and if a storm comes, you stay awake, watching the light. Writing in the log, there is no applause, no rescue, no news. But the light stays lit. This is your day. A day lived with silence, salt, and a duty few will ever understand. The rhythm repeats, each day the same, but subtly different, like the waves themselves. Soft pause. Now, let's gently leave this daily rhythm behind, and look toward a woman whose quiet bravery became legend. Let us now drift. Eyes. Toward segment 2. Let us now journey northward, to the rugged coast of Northumberland, where the sea is a cold gray whisper. The Farne Islands stand like lonely stones in the water. It is the year 1838, and a young woman lives on one of those rocks, in a lighthouse where wind is your lullaby and solitude is your neighbor. Her name is Grace Darling. She is 22. She lives with her father and mother in the long stone lighthouse, a squat cylindrical structure made of stone, its walls thick against the wind, its windows round and narrow like watchful eyes. Each day, Grace helps with the duties of lighthouse keeping. She trims wicks, cleans the lenses, and records the weather in tidy script. She cooks meals, boils tea, and mends clothing, all by lamplight, all while listening to the restless sea just beyond the walls. She knows the tides like a clock, the wind like a voice. She is not seeking adventure. She is not trying to be remembered. She is simply living. But the sea, in its quiet unpredictability, has other plans. It is early morning, September 7th, 1838. A storm has passed, not with thunder or violence, but with heavy skies and a surging tide. The sea still rolls, slow and uncertain, and the mist lingers like a veil. Through this mist, Grace sees something, a shadow, dark and broken. A wreck. The Forfarshire, a paddle steamer, has struck the rocks near Big Harcar Island, just under a mile from the lighthouse. It had been bound for Dundee, but now its hull is torn. Much of the vessel has already disappeared beneath the waves, but Grace sees movement. People clinging to the remaining portion of the wreck. There are survivors, cold, wet, and stranded on the sharp rocks, waves pounding just feet away. She tells her father, there is no hesitation. The lifeboat is too heavy to launch from the lighthouse. So instead, they take a smaller boat, a Coble, narrow and flat-bottomed, not built for rescue, not meant for storms. But it is all they have. Grace rows, her father rows.
How we do that with the sea is not calm. It lifts them, rocks them, tries to turn them back.
But they continue, stroke after stroke. Grace's hands grip the oars, her arms ache, but she does not stop. The wreck is slick with seaweed, jagged with splintered timber. Grace holds the boat steady, while her father climbs onto the rock to help the survivors. They take 5 into the boat on the first trip. One is a woman, Sarah Dawson, clutching her children though they do not move. There is no time to mourn, only to row. They return to the lighthouse, then back again, for more survivors. In total, they rescue 9 people. No trumpet sounds, no cheering crowd. It's just the wind and the sea and the quiet breath of those who are alive, who would not have been had she not rowed. Word spreads slowly, then quickly. Newspapers pick up the story. A nation, weary of industrial smoke and distant wars, finds peace in her quiet courage. She becomes a symbol, not of conquest or royalty, but of duty, strength, and stillness. She is offered rewards, gifts. Visitors come, hoping to glimpse the girl who braved the sea. Some bring portraits, some bring medals. Grace accepts little. She does not leave the lighthouse. She does not perform for attention. She returns to the rhythm of the sea, the wick, the logbook, silence. Years pass. She begins to fade from the public eye, though never from memory. In 1842, Grace becomes ill, perhaps tuberculosis. She is just 26. Her life ends quietly, much like it was lived. But the light she kept, both literal and symbolic, never truly went out. A small museum exists now in her name, her Koble. The boat she rowed is still preserved. And a monument stands above her resting place near Bamberg, where the wind still hums and the sea still tells her story. Grace Darling did not shout. She did not seek fame. But she moved through the storm, gently with purpose, and sometimes that is all history asks of us. Soft pause, now that we have rode through fog and memory. Let us turn to a quieter, stranger mystery. The invisible curves of glass and light gave the sea its stars. Coming next, we explore the peaceful, mathematical elegance of the Fresnel lens. The peaceful geometry of lenses, how light curves over water, and lighthouse design. Let us now shift our gaze. From the people who kept the light to the light itself, and the glass that carried it, farther than it had ever traveled before. Because long before electricity could blaze across the sky, long before radar could bounce across waves, there was a soft flickering flame, magnified by glass. That kept sailors safe. And in the 1820s, one man, Augustin Jean Fresnel, changed how that light moved. Fresnel was not a sailor. He was a mathematician, a thinker, quiet, sickly, often overlooked. But he believed something radical at the time. He believed that light moved in waves. Most scientists still clung to the idea that light behaved like particles, little dots flying through space. But Fresnel saw something else, a rhythm, a pulse, a pattern, a calm and invisible ripple. And with this understanding, he built a lens unlike any before. If you were to picture an ordinary magnifying lens, you might imagine a thick, curved disc of glass, smooth, heavy, solid. It bends light through refraction, slowing and redirecting rays as they pass through. But Fresnel's lens was something different. It was thinner, much thinner, like a lens that had been sliced into rings, each one carefully adjusted to bend light in just the right way. Imagine the cross-section of a lighthouse lens, series of delicate glass steps, concentric circles, each angled and curved with perfect precision, like the ripples on a still pond, frozen in glass. And the result was astonishing. A small flame placed at the center could now be seen for over 20 miles. Its light, once diffused and humble, became narrow, focused, and piercing. A single beam sweeping across the sea, precise as a finger pointing the way home. The Fresnel lens was revolutionary, but quiet in its revolution. No explosion, no thunder. It's just a more perfect way of seeing. Lighthouse keepers revered these lenses, not just for their function, but their beauty. They were marvels of engineering, cut and polished like giant jewels, sometimes standing taller than a man. To clean one was an act of reverence. To damage one, it's damageable. They came in different sizes, or orders. First-order lenses, the largest, sat in ocean lighthouses where visibility meant survival. Sixth-order lenses, small and gentle, watched over harbors and river mouths. The light inside was often powered by oil, then later by kerosene. Eventually, electricity.
How the lens remained.
Spinning gently on a clockwork base,
Like this.
often floating on a bath of mercury for frictionless rotation. And when it turned, it cast that slow, familiar rhythm. A flash, a pause, a flash. Every lighthouse had its own signature, its own character of light. One might flash every 10 seconds. Another might blink twice, then rest. Sailors memorized them, watched for them in the fog, and when the right pattern appeared through the mist, they knew where they were. Lighthouse design evolved, too shaped by geography and purpose. Some stood tall and narrow on cliffs like needles of stone. Others were squat and wide, built to withstand the ceaseless battering of waves. Some were painted with bold stripes or checkered patterns, not for beauty, but so they would stand out against the sea and sky. But always, at the center, was the light. And at the heart of the light was the lens. Even today, many Fresnel lenses remain in place, some still functioning, some preserved in museums, their concentric rings catching the sunlight, reflecting rainbows in rooms now quiet and still. They are reminders that sometimes the most important revolutions are gentle, precise, and made of glass. Soft pause. And now, having followed the light across the waves, we come to shore. Let us now leave behind the lonely tower and drift into gentler places, where the salt hangs in the curtains and tea is served beside a smoldering fire. Let us enter the coastal cottages, a captain's at rest. Nautical homes, ocean view parlors, and maritime-inspired interior routines. Now the winds soften, the gulls quiet, and we leave behind the lonely towers of light to visit homes just inland, where the sea still speaks, but in whispers. Welcome to the quiet world of the retired sea captain, a place where teak and brass meet ticking clocks, and the storm lives only in memory. Along the British and New England coasts, during the 1800s, seafaring men, after years of voyages, trade routes, and tempests, often came to rest. Came cottages that looked out over the same water that once ruled their lives. These homes were modest but thoughtful. Their architecture reflected the sea itself, simple, weathered, and enduring. Shingled roofs, low ceilings, whitewashed walls, in all ways. A view of the sea? Inside you might find a parlor, faintly scented with salt and beeswax. The windows rattled gently when the wind came off the water. The curtains were often lace, light enough to flutter, but sturdy enough to last. A fireplace glowed, not bright, just warm enough to take the chill off a damp evening. Beside it, a worn armchair, and on the mantel, perhaps, a piece of driftwood, a brass compass, or a bit of rope tied in a sailor's knot. Decorative, but purposeful. These homes were filled with echoes of a maritime life. A barometer hung by the front door, a map of shipping lanes above the writing desk, and in the hallway, a shelf of logbooks, some leather-bound, others fraying at the edges. The kitchen, too, bore the mark of the sea. Tin mugs, iron kettles, and a rack of preserved goods. Jams, salted fish, hard biscuits, habits from long voyages that never quite faded. But meals here were quiet affairs. Supper at 5, tea at 7. Bread still warm from the hearth, served with thick butter, and perhaps a smoked herring or slice of soft cheese. Conversation, if it came, was measured. Rhythm of these homes was not hurried. After decades aboard ships where orders were barked and danger could come with the wind, these captains now, in their winter years, cherished silence. The tick of a long case clock, the creak of the floorboards, the sigh of the sea, just beyond the window. Their routines were almost ritualistic. At sunrise, a stroll to the edge of the cliff, or the harbor's end, to check the weather and smell the wind. At noon, a pipe, a letter, or a book. And always, by late afternoon, a careful polish of brass, perhaps an old spyglass, or a telescope once used on deck. Visitors might come, neighbors, nieces, the occasional apprentice, sailor, but these visits were short, and tea was always served with ceremony. Fine china, blue and white, often chipped but cherished, a small plate of scones, maybe marmalade, and always, the sea outside within sight. Even in sleep, the habits of the sea remained. They turned in bed with the rhythm of the tides, woke at odd hours as if on watch, listened for storms in their dreams. Many of these cottages had names: Seadrift, the Lookout, Gannet's Nest, painted neatly on small wooden signs by the gate, as though the home itself had a story to tell, needed only the right listener. These were not grand estates, they were not loud homes, but they were filled with time. Time to think, time to remember, time to be still. And in that stillness, one could almost hear the past, the clang of rigging, the cry of sailors, the bell of a distant buoy ringing through the mist. For these captains, the sea was no longer a danger. It was a companion, not something to conquer, but something to sit beside and listen to. Soft pause, now, as the light fades beyond the water. As the fog returns to wrap the cliffs, let us gently draw this story to its close. We have seen the lanterns trimmed. We have watched grace row through mist. We have bent light through perfect glass, sat beside a fire with men who once lived on waves. Let us drift now, toward the end. And now, the wick has been trimmed for the last time tonight. The logbook is closed. The waves, so full of voice and rhythm, have quieted to a hush. Tonight, You have stepped into a life that was measured not in hours, but in tides. A life ruled not by cities or clocks, but by wind, fog, and the flicker of flame. To live as a lighthouse keeper in 1800 was to live apart. Far from markets, far from music, far from crowds, but not far from meaning. Every small task, polishing the lens, refilling the oil, winding the mechanism, was an act of care. A quiet assurance that someone, somewhere, might find their way home. Even in solitude, there was connection. Because out there, beyond the spray and stone, a ship might be watching. Captain might be scanning the dark horizon, hoping for just one flash of light. And whether it came from a flickering lamp behind thick glass, or from the calm hands of someone like Grace Darling, it meant hope. It meant life. Not all lights blaze, some simply glow, steady, warm, and constant. So much of history, so many of its quiet lives, are not remembered for conquest or noise, but for the simple, repeated act of showing up, of standing watch, of keeping the light, as you rest now. Perhaps you hear it, the distant churn of waves, the hollow tone of a foghorn in the distance, the slow tick of time in a place where time forgot to hurry. Let the salt wind fade, let the lantern dim, let the tide roll out into darkness. Taking with it all that weighed heavy, you are safe, you are warm, and the light has been kept, just for you. Good night.